Welcome back to the Nick Taylor Horror Show. We have a super special episode today with Brea Grant and Natasha Kermani in the house. Brea Grant is an actress, writer, director, graphic novel author, and a household name in the horror community. Perhaps best known among us horror fans for her acting work in Dexter, Heroes, After Midnight, and Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, Brea also recently wrote and directed the very bloody and very funny 12-Hour Shift, now streaming on Hulu. And if that wasn't enough, Brea has released her newest graphic novel, Mary, The Adventures of Mary Shelley's great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter. Natasha Kermani is an Iranian-American filmmaker who made waves on the horror circuit in 2017 with her feature debut, Imitation Girl, a hypnotic doppelgänger science fiction treat. In what many would call a horror dream team, Brea and Natasha recently came together on Lucky, written by and starring Brea with Natasha directing. Now streaming on Shudder, Lucky is a dark, satirical slasher with very relevant social commentary. The film tells the story of a young woman who finds herself stalked by a murderous figure who appears in her house every night and tries to kill her. With zero help from friends and local authorities, she realizes she has to take this predator out herself. Lucky is not only a very effectively frightening slasher, but a refreshingly unadulterated statement on violence against women in America. It's the type of movie that has the potential for multiple interpretations, which is one of the things that makes it as fascinating and powerful as it is. Lucky is now streaming on Shudder. In this conversation, Natasha and Brea trade career strategies, writing processes, and discuss the production story behind Lucky. All of this and so much more on today's episode of the Nick Taylor Horror Show. Now, without further ado, here is Brea Grant and Natasha Kermani. Brea and Natasha, good to see you both. How's everything going?
Good. Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Good. Really good. So can you guys walk us through essentially how the movie came together? I know that there's probably a big story behind it. Really curious as to how you guys joined forces as well. So can you just kind of walk us through how the movie came together from, the writing of the script to you guys joining forces and, here we are and you guys are on Shudder?
Yeah. I started working on the script in, I think, probably 2000. I've been trying to figure this out. I think it was probably like 2015, 2016, something like that. And I took it a few places once I finished it. I wrote various drafts. I mean, I know you said a lot of your listeners are writers. Just want to I love talking about the number of drafts these kinds of things go through because they go through so many iterations. Yeah. And they change and they morph. And, sometimes you take them someplace and someone gives you really great notes and you end up taking those with you, even if they didn't actually make the movie. And that did happen a few times. And then I went some places and they gave me really terrible notes. And I did not take those notes, or I tried to take those notes and then it didn't work out. And then at some point, Epic reached out to me and they asked if I had any screenplays because they were trying to make something under the Dread label. And I sent them this, and I think that it was basically they read it and were like, "Yeah, we want to make this." And to their credit, they had very few changes in the script. I mean, I'd been working on it, tinkering with it for a long time, but they kind of were like, yeah, and we want to make this with Natasha Kermani because we just did Imitation Girl with her. They had just released Imitation Girl, I think.
Yeah,
right,
yeah, exactly.
And they were they really liked working with her, and they wanted me to be in it. So that was kind of like what they came back to me, and they sent it to Natasha. Without asking me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it was interesting because so I had just finished Imitation Girl. I was sort of looking for what was going to be next. And I really responded to not just the content of Brea's script, but it just felt like a big challenge, and people who have seen the movie will understand what I mean by that. But she's juggling a bunch of tones. There's obviously very strong themes and strong social issues lying underneath the film itself. But I was sort of drawn to the challenge on every level. And so, after the first read, I was just super into it. And I did read it with Brea in mind as the main character. And yeah, so then, and Brea and I knew each other already. So I was able to just sort of reach out and be like, hey, I read your script. I think it's great. Let's have a conversation. And then out of those initial few conversations, I think we realized, okay, we're really on the same page here. We sort of are aligned with the story that we want to tell. And then, we were ready to sort of come together as a team and see if we could make it, bring it to the screen.
Very cool. And Brea, you'd spoken briefly about the iterative process of screenwriting, and you've done a number of screenplays. Big fan of 12-Hour Shift, by the way. But could you talk about your overall writing process and the kind of the script iteration process? Because I feel like a lot of would-be screenwriters and actual screenwriters are just daunted by the fact that they might not get the most perfect vision on the first draft, and it's just the most kind of shot in the foot for a lot of screenwriters. And I don't think a lot of people realize that it is so iterative. You write a crappy draft, then you write another draft that's not as crappy, and then you get insight, and then you turn into a blind alley. So I'm curious as to what your process is like, and also what your collaboration is like. I mean, you said that you'd submitted the draft for a few notes. So I mean, could you talk about your overall process and who you collaborate with in terms of getting notes?
Yeah, totally. I think there's two different kinds of screenwriters, really. I think there are people who really labor over that first draft, and it takes them upwards of a year, more than a year, to write a first draft. And I have friends that are writers, and that is their process. Their process is every word. By the time they get through that first draft, it is actually like pretty good. Like it's a great, perfect draft. That is not me. I am a throw spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks kind of writer. This is very bad, but if I'm writing something on my own without somebody else, without anybody looking over my shoulder, a lot of times like my outline is like 4 sentences. Like it's like, I know, like I know what happens, at my midpoint. I know what my third act is, maybe. I know what my inciting incident is. And if I have that, I'm kind of like, here we go. And like sort of start to write. But I think that helps me because it makes me a little less precious about my work. Mm-hmm. So it means that like I can get through a draft, I can get it done. And then once I start letting other people read it, I haven't labored over it for 3 years or something. And I can be much more open and sort of recognize the flaws. And I think the flaws come out so much quicker to me. Just the problems I'm going to have because I'm writing, so quickly. But yeah, I mean, my day-to-day process is actually like, I have a pretty strict routine. I don't have many words I would describe myself as, but one is probably disciplined. I am shockingly disciplined, especially if you know me, because I think I come across maybe not. But I write every day. I write either, depending on what I'm doing, a certain number of pages or a certain number of rewrite pages on something. So I hit that number every day, regardless of what I'm doing, unless I'm in like knee deep in production. And then I give myself a break. But that's really important to me. And once I started doing that, I think I got a lot more written. I got a lot of crap written that wasn't great, but I got a lot of really good stuff written. A lot of stuff that you're seeing now. That's all just from me learning to write every single day and sort of treating it like a job. Because my job up until writing was acting, and it was not something I could do every day. And then I just like to touch on like the process. Like once I start sending it out to people, I really, really rely on a group of writer friends in LA who, bless them, will read any draft, and I read any draft of theirs, and we kind of just send it around and we go, is this good? Is this a script? Is this worth doing? Like, it's like those kinds of questions. And then, I have people, and then as things go along, I start to send it to more professional friends, but I just have this group of writer friends that, they're just so helpful because they can they aren't judgmental. They know my writing really well. One of them is Eric J. Stoltz, who wrote The Stylist. And we've just been trading drafts of stuff for years and years. Yeah. And I read all of his stuff and he reads all mine, and we kind of just pass it around and give each other notes. And I feel like we both know each other's writing just incredibly well at this point. So, I mean, if people are sort of looking for that writing advice, like what that magic bullet is. I mean, there is no magic bullet. I guess that is what the magic bullet is. The magic bullet for me has been discipline and goal setting and making sure that like I'm actually just doing something every single day.
Right. I feel like that's huge. And I feel like it's something a lot of writers overlook. You know, having that, in my case, I was inspired by Stephen King's 1,000 word or 2,000 word a day minimum, coupled with Jerry Seinfeld's strategy of having a calendar and you X every day that you write. And then you like the look of connective X's on a calendar. It's so just like simple human, but it works. You just kind of like gamify the process.
Yeah.
I found that super helpful.
I'm a to-do lister. So like every morning, like every day I have a to-do list, and every day is like I'm doing rewrites on something right now. And it's just like, you know, I rewrite like 5 pages or so a day because I'm pretty deep into it. So I'll just, I got to hit that number of pages. And then the rest of the day I can really like screw around if I wanted to, you know,
it is a nice feeling.
Yeah. I mean, my to-do list ends up being incredibly long. So crap, I probably shouldn't even put on there, but it is important to me. And I love, the greatest joy in my life is checking off my to-do list. So
Cross it off.
Part of the reason I write is so I can check it off the to-do list. It just makes me so happy.
Natasha, does this differ from your own writing process?
It is a little different. I think I am a little bit more, I read a lot. So I think my checking list often is like reading scripts, which is sometimes really, so, you know, and it's interesting from the directing perspective. It's like, as you're reading, you are writing, right? So usually I have like half of my screen is the script. The other half is my little notes document. And so as I'm reading, I'm sort of processing on my notes side, and then I finish the script and I can go back and I sort of have all of my notes, but they are writer notes, right? So it's like this character line doesn't follow through, or this, you know, this doesn't pay off in the right way. So I think it's a lot of, you know, from the directing side of things, it's a lot of that part of your brain. Rather than like gestating new ideas, it's sort of looking at what's on the page and how it can be articulated better. And something I really liked about Brea's script, and I think, Brea, this is true for all of your work, is that, and maybe this is your acting background, but the characters are always really specific and they're like fully articulated. And I think that that's actually something that a lot of scripts I read are lacking. So maybe especially with horror, right, the structure is there, or the scares are there, right? They're hitting all those beats. But who are these people?
Right.
You know? And I think that's something, you know, maybe from your acting, or I don't know, people are interesting to you. They're interesting to me. So I think that's important to also remember.
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes in part from acting and approaching most scripts like from a character perspective. But I think it's also like you. I mean, as an actor, I read so many scripts, and my first job in LA, one of my first jobs was I was a script reader for CAA. So like I started my career here reading scripts, and I will say a million wonderful things about horror. The one thing I will say is that sometimes the characters are lacking, and I have played those characters as an actor. Natasha's heard me tell this story. There's a movie I'm in where quite literally my character is like somebody's girlfriend, and there's one part where I'm walking from a room to another room and I just disappear. I like the other main characters are still there because it's like my character is such a throwaway character. And I've just played a lot of sort of like side characters where I have had to ask myself, like, does this character have a job? Does this character have like parents? Like, does this character, like, they're just like cookie cutter, like
one-dimensional
blonde girlfriend? Yeah, like it's a
because the scares, and the scares don't drive the movie. The character's journey is what drives the movie, and I think so many scripts are like an interesting conceit. It's an interesting horror conceit. But I don't care about the main character. I can't track his or her journey. And so that was another thing. And it's especially interesting with Lucky because the story is so unhinged. And so the fact that I was able to really track, even on the first read, right? Even in the quick first read through of Lucky, I really tracked May's journey and where she was at any point in the journey. And that really gives you something as a filmmaker to latch onto and then build outwards from. So,
yeah. I think it's fascinating that your background as an actor enables your writing. It just makes a lot of sense because you clearly are, you know, with your acting background, able to get into the mindset of a character and really dimensionalize them in your own head, which as a writer, that's got to be such a leg up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good and bad in some ways. So I talk to so many actors that start writing. That's I feel like this is a conversation I'm constantly having with actors who are moving into writing or trying to write something for themselves. And my number one advice to actors, because I think we end up with like a whole different set of issues, is that we don't give our characters enough flaws. I think that's not me. I love to give my characters flaws, but I think that was actually like from seeing so many scripts written by actors, and they just had trouble making their characters flawed, because I think we want to feel for our characters, and we want to root for our characters. And it's hard as a writer to root for your characters when you're giving them like horrifying flaws, right? But as an actor, you feel for them so much. Natasha and I were talking about, or in one interview, we were talking about the character May, and it was weird because about halfway through, I felt like I was really like defending her in some ways. Like I felt like even though I feel like she makes all these decisions that I don't agree with, and I remember writing them in a way that I didn't agree with them, and then about halfway through shooting, I was like, no, I do agree with this. And I was defensive of her. I felt myself getting defensive of her choices, even though when I wrote it, I was writing things that I thought were like, I definitely did not agree with, which is such a strange mind fuck. Can I say fuck on the show?
Yeah, please.
Please.
Fuck away. Did you, sorry, that came out wrong. Did you write the screenplay with yourself in mind as the lead actress?
No. I was always picturing someone just much more together than I am. Someone much more. I mean, I think I ended up looking like this person, so it's like weird to try to explain it. But I think if you know me, you know that I can. I'm not necessarily this character, but I think the way Natasha shot me and the way she dressed me and just like her vision for me, once I kind of saw that through her mind, that was the vision I had for the character, but then she kind of put me in that, and I was able to kind of wrap my brain around it. The more it was mostly because we went and I tried on a bunch of clothes, and you were like, yes, this, and then I was like, oh, I can see myself in this character. Like it helped me a ton to put on these clothes that Natasha thought would fit May. But no, I wasn't writing for myself. I was writing for a role that I would like to see someone play.
Interesting. And then Natasha, was there a point where you said, Brea, you have to play this character? Like how did that decision get made?
Really from the beginning. I mean, really from the beginning. I just read it with her in mind. And also, that was one of the stipulations of the financing, was that they did want, and that's that's in this case great because Brea is a pleasure to work with. But it's also something, again, going back to people trying to get their projects off the ground. I think I have a lot of friends who are trying to get their projects off the ground, and they have, oh, well, this role has to go to person X or person Y, person Z. And it's like, well, you kind of maybe have to keep those things open because a lot of times, right, that's part of the calculation, it's part of the package that's coming together. So it was great for me because it was like, well, in order to do this, we really want Brea in as the role. And I was like, 2 thumbs up. Great, let's do it. So cool. I think that was a really, again, just like a kismet thing of it kind of coming to me, being different, very low budget financing, but still, enough to make the movie. So. Yeah.
When you observe the movie and its just overall singularity of vision, it's surprising that this is your first collaboration together, because you guys just seem to be in such lockstep, from director, writer, actor. Could you talk about how you guys built a shorthand over the course of making this movie? Because just from the viewer perspective, it seems just like you guys have a very seamless collaboration.
Yeah, it was a shorthand, basically, I think that a lot of women have, just because this story is unfortunately a sort of an experience that a lot of women share. So I think a lot of that sort of intention comes through just through our shared experience. And again, we had a lot of women on the team, on the crew, and then even, the men who were able to read the script and say, yes, I know this story. My girlfriend tells me this, my mother, my sister, whatever. So I think that sort of shared human experience is where it starts. And then I think the second part is like we have a really similar sense of humor. and I think that was the other thing also with a lot of Brea's co-stars and the cast that we assembled was just finding people who were going to find the humor and understand that we're making a satire. So it's like sort of setting those baseline parameters is really the groundwork for it. And then the last part of it is not having a big ego and not, being like, this is the Brea Grant show. This is the Natasha show. This is the Drew show. Like it's, we're working together to do something. So.
Yeah. And it really, I mean, to me, it really felt like that, which was really nice. But also, I mean, on budgets this size, I think things can get very unprofessional. Like I'll just say it. It's awful. Like people, and it's personalities, it's ego. It's like, I don't know what it is. People are angry. I don't know. But I just have been on so many sets where there's just ego. There's ego and people not getting along and people not being professional. And from moment one, Natasha was incredibly professional, incredibly like, very open to me about everything she was doing. Like there were no secrets. Like this weird thing happens on these micro budgets where there's all these like people are like, oh, but they're keeping weird secrets. I know that sounds like not like insane, but it is totally what happens on production.
Power plays, weird little power plays. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very weird. And there was none of that from the beginning on this. Ugh. And I will also say like, the directorial choices were all Natasha's. Natasha, like I firmly believe there should be a strong vision, a strong person at the helm of the ship. You need a captain, you need a general, whatever that term is, you need that person. And everyone needs to fucking listen to that person and make sure that person's vision is coming through, and we're all on the same page. And Natasha's very open about her vision. There's no power play there. She's like, this is what it is. And then everyone can just fall in step. So there was never a
job. Yeah. They can do their job.
Yeah, they can do their jobs. You give people that room to do their jobs. And there's never that moment where I'm like, ooh, is this going to be good? Because I know she's so confident in what she's doing that I could literally, and we could talk about this, but like at some point we finished all the rewrites on the script to shoot it. And I just stepped back and just acted. And like, there was never a question of who was in charge. It was Natasha like that. And it should be Natasha because it's the only way the movie's going to be any fucking good. Mm-hmm. And like, and I think this is the problem that even on movies of this size, you end up with like so many people's hands in the pot trying to like mix stuff around. I don't know what that metaphor is, but like people trying to like piss on it. They're trying to add their own stink to the project. And it's like, no, like I've done my job as a writer and I can walk away because I know I have a strong director and I can bring in what I'm going to bring as an actor, but it should be Natasha's vision. And the movie really is a reflection of her choices. And it would not be the movie it is without those choices.
I think there's a difference between ego and confidence. Not having confidence is what leads to the insecurity of people having big egos. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think the key, and we actually talked about this when we talked about Imitation Girl, Nick, that a lot of my crew are people I work with really regularly. And so there's a lot of confidence. There's a lot of trust. There's a lot of like, we know each other. We're cool. When I'm asking for this, you know what we're talking about, right? Like go do your thing. And so, our DP, a lot of the crew, even the actors, I mean, Larry Cedar is someone I've worked with a bunch of times. And so I think that, sort of talking about confidence and honesty as sort of being connected and being open in that way, I think is what leads to, not having like a pissing contest between people. And I think a lot of that insecurity comes up when people are like nervous around each other or nervous about their own abilities. And it's kind of like, no, if you know your script, you know your job. Like, it ain't my first rodeo. It's not Brea's. Nobody's first rodeo on this movie. We know what we're doing. So let's go execute it.
But I think you even underestimate because you are so competent at your job. You underestimate that other people who are directing indies a lot of times they're showing up unprepared. And that is, for me as an actor who has directed, that's so frustrating. And it's the first thing when a director shows up and they even if they don't know what's happening in this moment or whatever, if they're unprepared and they don't have a strong vision, I just watch sets fall apart. I watch people lose confidence in their director. And it's not something that would even cross your mind because you would never show up like that, but I think, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. I've just been, I was an actor for 10 years. So I just watched it happen on a lot of indies,
Yeah. And that preparation is meeting with your department heads, knowing your script inside and out, processing all of the scenes, not just in the blocking and the drama of it, but also on the technical side, right? Like, what are my shots? How are we covering it? What's the production design? We were talking about wardrobe earlier. Like, wardrobe is one of my most favorite things to do as a director. I think that it's so key. I think because I care about what I wear and it informs me as a person. I'm like, this is really important that I know what every character is wearing. So it's like, what jewelry does she have on in this scene, right? Like, that's what, when Brea says the preparation, it's all of those 1,000 little details that even if you're not being paid, you need to find the time to go through and create your own system for having answers to all of those questions.
And it's doable. We shot this movie so quickly, and I just think people think because it's not a studio movie or you don't have, $10 million or something, which I guess is also a small budget. I don't know, but we shot it for so little, but it is doable to have this stuff done. And I think it starts with ego again, because I think a lot of directors think they can stroll on the set and make that decision on the day, and why would you? There's no reason to do that.
Well, I think that notion of confidence versus ego is enormous, because if you show up and you have an ego, people are going to tune out and they're not going to want to work with you.
Yeah.
Or if you're not confident enough, that's also a way to lose your cast and crew as well. So, I feel like that fine balance is really, really critical. Mm-hmm. So the movie was shot in 15 days. Is that right?
Yeah.
How did you pull that off?
I pitched it at 18, by the way.
Okay.
So I wasn't
they couldn't give you those extra 3 days?
we were at 18. They talked me down to 16. I was like, fine. And then we had a really, really horrible conversation with our line producer, who is a genius, Chelsea. But yeah, we ended up with 15. How did we pull it off? Well, most of it is in the house, right? Mm-hmm. So the art team fought really hard to get that house, because the house logistically covered a lot of the movie, and in a way that wasn't impossible to move through it. Logistically, the way it was set up, it allowed us to sort of move quickly through it, and sort of leapfrog. So Art would be working in one room, we'd be shooting in the other, and we could kind of pull it off. That was a big thing. And again, that goes back to the script being really contained. Right. You can't do that if you're doing a company move, every location. The fact that it is so, centered in the house. And then we had our little offshoot days that we put at the end. So we knocked out the house first, which was always the goal, to sort of get the meat and potatoes of the movie first. And okay, we got this in the can.
Right.
And then we sort of went on to the more ambitious things. And we actually ended the movie with the most important sequence, which is the parking garage sequence. Ooh. So we had our last 2 days was actually the last 2 days of the movie, which was really intense. But I think it worked out. And that was actually just due to scheduling availability and stuff. But I'm actually grateful for it, because I think at that point we had such we were kind of flying, at that point, and we knew the language of the film at that point. So I think, and we have been working with the stunts people. It's one of our more stunt heavy sections of the movie. So, yeah. And then it was really important to me. Obviously, initially I wanted 3 days in the parking garage. I got 2. So that's another lesson here, kids. Ask for as much as you actually, think you need. And so we had 2 days in the parking garage, which was really important to me to really try to preserve at least that chunk of time, because it was such a pivotal sequence in the film. So
cool.
Yeah, we shot fast. We shot really fast.
Cool. So horror historically has worked really well as a vehicle for social commentary. And in the case of Lucky, I mean, it's very much on display. And I feel like the best social commentary when it comes to horror is that you can you can project your own interpretation in. And I feel like with this movie there were so many takeaways for me, but then they kept kind of developing and I thought that I knew what it was about, but it's still kind of evolving in my own mind. So, I mean, I'm curious from your guys' perspective, how would you categorize what this movie is actually about? Or do you prefer to leave it for the viewer's interpretations?
Well, I can say what I think and then Brea can say what she thinks. I think it is a satire that's looking closely at the experience of women in the world as an absurd and the absurdity of the violence that women face regularly. And so violence used in a number of different ways. There's physical violence in the movie. There's emotional violence. There's the violence of exhaustion. And so sort of exploring the toll that takes on our character, who is a woman who, she's a self-help book author. She's supposed to be somebody who has all the answers. And the question for me really was, what happens when this woman who is supposed to have all the answers suddenly is faced with a problem that is not solvable. Right. There is no answer to this question. And that's really, that was sort of the spine for me that ran through, every scene of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that did it. That was good.
Right.
I think that was good. I mean, I think there's a lot of takeaways. I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff in there. I mean, the script definitely started more as just very much straightforward. This is a movie about the normalization about violence against women. That's what it started as. But the more I wrote it, the more I wanted to talk about like conversations between women. I'm going to talk about a specific brand of business lady white feminism, and I wanted and I want to talk about like imperfect women. Like that's always something that's really interesting to me. Mm-hmm. I just speaking again about characters with flaws. It is a little bit of my like feminist quest to, if we're going to put more women front and center, we need to see women as humans. Humans have flaws, therefore women should have flaws. So I think like I just like to see women who have actual moral quandaries and issues they have to deal with and like have done things that they aren't proud of, because I think that is humanizing.
Yeah. So I feel like the title is very, very revealing. And then when the title is spoken in the movie, it all, for me, just in a very sardonic way came together. I hope this isn't any sort of a spoiler, but how do you explain the title? Why is it called Lucky?
I mean, I think it works on, I think there's a lot of reasons. And we talked about changing this title because it's not Googleable, right? It's not an easy, there's a movie I love called Lucky. Like right. It is not the greatest choice for a title when it comes to stuff like that. But I think it was the greatest choice for this movie. Because even Natasha and I tried to come up with other names and we never came up with anything that we thought worked as well, because it just works on so many different levels. It is supposed to be a satire. Yeah. It's ironic. It's supposed to make you laugh, but also it's supposed to make you think, because at the end of the day, she is lucky because she is alive.
Right.
And she is lucky in other ways as well. I think you're supposed to take it in a lot of ways.
And also in a very literal way, because I think that is something that is pulled from real life, is that idea of like, well, you're so lucky that nothing else happened. Right.
Meanwhile, something horrendous happened.
Right. Which did come from my real life around I got robbed at one point, and when I talked to the police, they were like, well, you're lucky you didn't get raped. And that was when I came up with this whole speech, because I was like, I'm not lucky. I mean, I'm just, I mean, I guess it is lucky in some ways, but I did get robbed. Like,
it's not the right word.
Yeah. Poor choice of words.
Yeah. But I think also it's been very interesting. I mean, I was speaking with someone, I think he's a reviewer or whatever. We were talking about the movie, and he said, he actually heard a lot of himself. He heard a lot of what he says to women in his life mirrored back at him.
Oh, wow.
Through these characters that were speaking to May, and sort of these little catchisms and things that they would say to her throughout the movie. And he was like, oh, I've said that, you know?
Oh yeah. There were so many moments where you just hear this very cliche sort of comforting words that you've heard 100 times. And it's just hearing it in the movie is like so cringeworthy.
And also that
yes.
Yeah. And like also that you've recited back to people. And I think that's, that's also within the title, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like just how we misuse words and terms and stuff without, you know, actually really looking at what's going on with the person sitting right next to us.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So the movie looks fantastic. From what I understand, you filmed in anamorphic, but could you talk us through some of the more technical elements of making the movie?
Yes, happily. I worked with, we worked with a bunch of really amazing technical people. Our cinematographer is an awesome cinematographer named Julia Swain. And Julia has a very moody, expressionistic tone to basically everything she does. We did a commercial together that's like the most like moody, gorgeous thing. And it's for, what was it for? Oh, it's for like a jeans company. But it looks like a really, it's like so ridiculous. But you know, and so, you know, and it's dark and moody and shadowy and all of that kind of glamorous stuff. So I actually had been eager to work with her in a narrative setting for a long time. We had sort of been wanting to collaborate, just sort of talking about the look of it. And I had an instinct that this really cinematic, expressionistic cinematography was going to work really well, not in opposition to, but as sort of a intention with the satire of the movie. So that's just like on the baseline level. The second part of that is that I really wanted to do anamorphic and specifically moody, not super sharp, not super modern lenses, because the world is so bizarre. And I didn't want, you know, right off the bat from the first shot of the movie, you have to know, oh, I'm watching a movie.
Right.
Like, this is not about reality. Don't expect this to feel real because shit's going to get real weird. So for me, that was super important to make sure right off the bat that people know, like, okay, we're through the looking glass. You're in Alice in Wonderland now. Like, you're in a movie setting. This is not a documentary. And then, you know, one other really fun thing that we talked a lot about, we actually talked about potentially doing mixed format as the movie continued, actually changing the format of the image, or switching our lens set and sort of really changing in a very, very drastic way. Ultimately, we decided it was too distracting to do that. So we did more subtle things. So almost every scene of the movie has some slight technical visual change. Whether we were changing the filtration that we were using, the focal length, you know, leaning more on different focal lengths. The movie starts a little bit flatter, and then we get a little bit more distance from May, and she gets a little bit more separated from the other characters in the movie. You also see a little bit more steady cam. It just gets a little bit crazier
right.
as it through. So we were really interested in creating a look that changed over the course of the movie. And so we worked with a really fantastic colorist out of Photochem named Alistair Arnold, who built a show LUT for us. So basically like an idea that we could apply, not an idea, a LUT that we applied to all of our dailies. So actually when I was standing there looking at the monitor, I was looking at an image that had our show LUT applied.
Right.
So I wasn't looking like a Rec 709 or whatever. It was much closer to what we were eventually going to do. And the basically the grade changes throughout the movie. And so that was like the last piece of it that we put together. But yeah, she was really jazzed by this idea of a look that evolves throughout the course of the film.
Yeah, it was noticeable.
She also made she pitched, like she made like a little like pitch like book. Do you remember this?
Yeah, and it was pretty much what we ended up doing.
Totally, and it was awesome, and it helped me to visualize her style and her, you know, in the movie. I mean, I think you had already decided she was the DP before that, but then she showed up with like this book, which again is just like a testament to like professionalism.
Yeah, and she was really excited by the idea of having these rules and parameters that then within those rules and parameters she could play. So sort of knowing by example, for example, when I say a rule, I mean like May's color is light blue. and then as the cinematographer, she's sort of able to explore that and take that, and apply it to the different sequences. So, I think she was inspired by the wackiness of the movie.
Really cool. Yeah, notice that the movie does change visually in a very gradual way, but you look at the beginning and then you look at the end. It's very, very different. It really evolves, which is interesting. So last few questions here. Natasha, this being your second feature, were there any major lessons that you pulled from directing Imitation Girl that really came in handy on this set?
Yeah, for sure. I think the idea of giving yourself a little bit more time and space, and not, again, this is crazy to say because we shot so fast, but even within that, not feeling, when you're on set and you're doing it, feeling like, no, this is my time. Mm-hmm. I have another 10 minutes. I'm going to use these 10 minutes until we have what I think we need. And I think we actually had a really tight ship on this one. We actually only ended up cutting little tiny interstitial moments. Mm-hmm. Pretty much what was in the script is what ended up on the screen, which means, and we didn't have reshoots or anything,
Yeah.
So, there's a few little things that we ended up cutting. For the most part, we were very efficient and in choosing what we were shooting, what we were spending our time filming. So I think that definitely was an improvement. There was, I think, a little bit more fat
mm-hmm. in
Imitation Girl that ended up getting trimmed into the final cut, whereas this was pretty much, pretty direct. And then I'll say, I think this is such a sort of abstract thing to say, but just surrounding myself with people who, are very comfortable to challenge stuff in the script or challenge my own direction in a healthy way.
Right.
Was not necessarily something I knew to look for in Imitation Girl. Whereas with this film, I think, I like that I will sit with Julia and Julia will say, I don't think that's the best way to cover this scene. What if we did this?
Yeah.
Is this interesting to you? And I think that is great, and I think the more of that is something that I really want to continue fostering in my relationships with crew.
That's huge, because I feel like you want crew members who are going to, question your decisions in a positive, not like annoying way, not like a way where they're doubting you, but like, hey, here's how I think you can make this better. Are you sure you want to do this? Because what about, I feel like that's what you want, as opposed to people who are just going to be difficult, or people are just going to say, yeah, okay. And knowing that, hey, maybe there's a better way to shoot it. Maybe there's a better lens or a better whatever, instead of just going up, you're the director, I'll take orders. I feel like you don't want order takers, nor do you want people who are just going to be difficult. I feel like there's a fine balance, and those people are worth their weight in gold.
Absolutely. And I think the difference is it's when they're inspired by the film, mm-hmm. and when they're inspired by the script and they get what you're doing, then they get engaged and they are more interested in suggesting ideas and a little bit more creatively, instead of just, okay, let's just get it done.
But they have to care.
They have to care.
Yeah.
They have to care.
Cool. So when it comes to writing, filmmaking, and acting, there's a lot of books on the topic, most of which are written by people who haven't actually done it, or even if they haven't exactly excelled at it. But that being said, were there any books or resources that were particularly formidable for both of you guys, either when it comes to writing, directing, even acting?
Oh, you asked me this last time.
It's weird. I just got an email today from an actor who was like, what book should I read to learn to write? And I was like, ugh. Like, once you understand the basics, I don't know. I mean, I was like, just watch a bunch of movies and then go find the screenplays, or, mm-hmm. Outline them yourself and see exactly how they're done, which is what I always do. I'm trying to think of anything for this particular movie.
I have something that I discovered over the holidays, which is, there's on YouTube, I think it's like 45 minutes long or something. There's the lens tests from Phantom Thread that PTA uploaded, and you can hear him. They basically run through, and these are dream lens tests, right? They're like in costume, lighting's up, they're in location. The actors are like basically improving scenes. So this is like very fancy lens test. But I think that is really great because you can hear PTA describing not only the technical specs. So he describes, like the lens choice, the focal length, what he likes about it, why he chose it. But you can also see the actors play. And obviously these are the best of the best in that movie doing the thing. And so I think that unguarded 45 minutes, super, super technical. So only for people who like really want to nerd out about this stuff. I just ate it up. I thought it's also one of my favorite movies of all time, but
Phantom Thread.
But yeah. And I think you can also see, if you know the movie well, you can see the choices that he changed. So you can see, he gets into, I keep talking about wardrobe, but he gets into, Reynolds, they had him in a tie, and they were like, that's all wrong. No, he's a bow tie guy, So it's like that kind of nitty gritty stuff. But I really recommend it for people who are looking for director minded content. So I think it's on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah. There was a podcast that I found really inspiring that ended up being I think it was supposed to go on and on, but it only ended up being like a short season. It's C. Robert Cargill did it. He's a genre writer, obviously, but it was just these little 15-minute snippets of him giving advice. And like some of it was answering questions. But he's very much a, clock in, clock out writer, which is what I consider myself as well. Like you go to work every day, you clock in, you do your hours, and then you're done. And, it's none of the like waiting for the muse to hit you. And, which is the kind of stuff that I really like, cause I'm a practical person, and I can't sit around and wait for some muse to show up or something. Right. That's time. But he answers a lot of great questions, and I found that like really inspiring. It came out maybe 2 years ago.
Oh wow, I gotta check that out.
It's called Ride Along.
Okay, cool. Great, thanks.
I want to check that out. That sounds great.
It's great, and it's not that many. I mean, it's like maybe 20 episodes or something. They're all 15 minutes long, so yeah, it's great.
Cool. So, what is next for you both?
Well, we're tossing around, as of this week, a kind of wacky idea that's also in the horror comedy satire space that, I don't know. I pitched Brea on it, so she might just be polite to me right now. But, I'm really excited about it. And I would really love to do something with Brea, again, that rides the line between thriller, horror, and comedy, because I think that's a really fun space. Specifically, satire is really interesting. So we're throwing that around right now, and Brea's got a graphic novel.
Yes, I was about to ask you about that. Could you tell us about, because Mary came out in 2020. How did your graphic novel come together?
It is my fourth that I've written. But it's been a while since I've written one. I haven't written one about 5 or 6 years. I did all my other ones with IDW, and this one I just had a friend who had read my old comics, and he started working at a company called 6 Foot, and he asked if I had any YA sci-fi pitches, and I said no, but I have a television pitch that I could make YA that already is sci-fi, and so I retrofitted this idea I had about the descendant of Mary Shelley, the fictional descendant of Mary Shelley, sort of not being able to live up to her what was expected of her, and then realizing that maybe there's this whole other world of monsters that she's supposed to be helping, which is a very complicated way. It's a coming of age story, but monsters. I worked on it. It was a 3-year process because by the time I wrote, because it's a full graphic novel, so it's by the time I wrote the whole thing, and it took about a year to get all the art finished, and then doing all the notes and stuff on the art took another like 6 months or so. So you can get it anywhere books are sold, but I like to suggest bookshop.org, because part of the percentage of a percentage of what you buy goes to your local bookstore if you buy it.
Oh wow, that's great.
Yeah, it's cool.
Okay,
it's cool. It's better, and you could get it overnight from Amazon, but I always say I've never heard of a book emergency, so I don't know why you would need it overnight.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you both so much. This was a real pleasure. And I'm really glad to hear that you guys are talking about doing another project together, because I really look forward to whatever you both do next, ideally together. Well, any parting wisdom for those aspiring filmmakers out there? And or writers, actors?
Do you have other skills? No, I'm kidding.
Quit now. It's like that scene in Labyrinth where the like rocks are yelling for her to turn back.
No.
I'm doing a Labyrinth sequel, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. I'm here for it.
I'm ready.
Our friend Maggie is writing it. Maggie Lemon.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I heard Prince originally was supposed to be the Goblin King.
Oh.
Could you imagine? It would have a very different movie, but
I can't imagine it. I don't hate it, but Bowie is the Goblin King. So.
Killed it, of course.
Rules are rules.
Yeah.
No, I think it's just, I feel like I'm just repeating myself, but it's surrounding yourself with people who are great collaborators, and really like lucky. I think I'm happy that part of what's coming out of this is that Brea and I are two women who were able to collaborate, and not just our collaboration as two people, but our entire crew. Again, this was the most women that I've ever worked with, and so finding those collaborations that are healthy and productive is really key, because this is not a solo. It's not a solo career. It's a community career.
Yep. Great. Cool.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again. This was a whole lot of fun, and congratulations on the movie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is now streaming on Shudder for all you listening, so check it out.
Yay.
Thank you.
All right, here as always are some key takeaways from this conversation with Natasha and Brea. Number 1, take note of ego versus confidence. There's a fine line that directors must always walk when on set. If you're too much of an egomaniac who barks orders at people all day without any regard for those around you, your crew will mutiny, and they should. Yes, of course, there are many directorial exceptions to this rule, but by and large, ego is the enemy. However, if you're too much of a pushover, your crew will walk all over you. This is why it's important to distinguish the difference between ego and confidence. Confidence is a necessary part of any directing job, as your entire cast and crew will be turning to you to make decisions on just about everything, and you need to have an answer or solution every time. In order to do that, you need confidence in your ability to lead. A film crew, just like a sea crew, needs a captain they can rely on. Without confidence, you will be eaten alive. But with too much ego, you'll be ignored. Learn the difference between the two and strike that balance. Number 2, take the time and space necessary. Directing is largely a game of hustle. Hustling to get your shots, make your day, and ensure everything goes according to plan. In the midst of all of this hustle, a lot can get lost in the fog, which is why it was very refreshing to hear Natasha talk about the importance of taking the time and space to get the shots right. Directing relies so much on your cognition in order to effectively tap into and communicate your creative vision. Rushing all the time and exerting stress on each and every move can obliterate your creativity. Yes, it's critical to make your day and get your shots without being too precious about details. But like everything, this is a balance, and it's important to ensure that you breathe and you take the time necessary to get what you need when the cameras are rolling, instead of just moving on every time as fast as possible. Number 3, work with those who will challenge your decisions. Making a movie is a matter of melding together an infinite amount of decisions. Everything from casting choices to camera angles, lighting cues, wardrobe details. The decisions are endless. As a director, your job is either to make those decisions or to hire someone you trust to make them for you. A director needs to have a growth mindset by embracing the necessity to get better with each movie, by learning as much as possible in the process. One of the best ways to do this is by learning from the cast and crew that you're privileged enough to be working with. This enables you to draw from decades of experience on a single movie, but similar to the first point, requires the relinquishing of your ego. Natasha spoke of the importance of having people around you who will respectfully challenge your decisions. This is priceless, since you want to always be getting better. The best way to do this is by surrounding yourself with trusted collaborators who can teach you and make sure that every detail of your movie is as good as it can be. You do not want a cast and crew of order takers who will do what you say just because you're the director. Instead, you want an open field of communication between yourself and your key collaborators so that everyone can do the best job that they can. This requires you to always be open to feedback and to select people to work with who will challenge your opinions with your expertise for the sake of the movie. Anyway, guys, thank you as always for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, why not share it with your friends and family on social media? Don't forget to follow the show on Instagram at I'm Nick Taylor. That's I am Nick Taylor, and on Twitter at the same handle. Thanks again for listening to The Nick Taylor Horror Show.